methodology and framework currently used by over 12,000 IT professionals and executives around the world in Fortune 500 enterprises and government agencies as their value creation and economic risk management governance framework. He has assisted CIOs, CISOs, and IT leaders in organizations such as Repsol, UTF, University of Akron, the United States, the Ohio State University, and the City of Columbus in developing their strategic plans with an IT value creation and realization approach. He is currently assisting CIOs and their teams in various enterprises to implement a culture of agile value creation centered around the digitization of business processes and the Internet of Things. Yes, Ruben.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Okay. English is my second or maybe third language, so normally I try to speak slow because otherwise people don't follow what I say. So after lunch, it's hard to keep everybody up and exciting, so I'm going to try to be dynamic. Instead of being in the podium, I'm going to be here moving my hands, so that way you guys can stay awake. But thank you everybody for joining me today. We don't have a lot of time, so instead of starting with a history or joke, I'm going to go right after the subject and get into the presentation. So the subject today is about how to justify IT security initiatives, and also why and how frameworks. There are a lot of frameworks that we could use, and how can we use some of them for assessing the value of investments, in particular IT security. There are many presentations going on about IT security, so I'm not going to try to tell you what IT security is and how to implement a strategy and so forth. I'm going to focus on the value assessment and value realization of IT security. That's what I'm going to focus on today. So this is just a kind of a attention getter. You know, we often present initiatives for approval, and many times we get the dollars and the money approved, but sometimes, you know, it's moved to the next into the next budget cycle. Has anyone have seen some of those? So, oops, no, there's no money for that. Let's go into the next cycle. So, let me ask you all a question. Raise your hand. How many of you have heard the term 2 as a number 2 speed IT? 2 speed IT. How many of you have heard of that? Can you just raise your hand? A couple of you. Okay. I'm going to explain you why I mentioned this term 2 speed IT. About a year ago, I was having coffee. Actually, I was having coffee. He was having tea because he's from India. But anyway, he is the chief technology officer for one of the largest insurance companies. I'm not going to say the name because maybe you work in that company. Okay. But I was having lunch with this gentleman and tea, and I asked him. His first name is Guru. I said, Guru, what's keeping you up at night? And he said, Ruben, there are so many projects and so many things going on. Our current strategic planning and budgeting approach is not working anymore. Our current strategic planning for IT and budgeting is not working. We got to change something. And I said, well, what's going on? And he's the one who told me, have you heard of the term 2 speed IT? And I heard that a little bit, kind of loosely. And I said, yeah, kind of, what's going on? And he explained me what it is. So I'm going to tell you what it is and why is this CTO that has about 2,000-3,000 people, I'm not sure how many, working for him, that's his number one subject, okay? Recently, I had the opportunity to meet with another CTO for another organization, and he works for the CIO for one of the largest states in the country. And I asked him, well, what's going on? And he said, well, I'm working with my boss, the CIO, about implementing a base-layered architecture. Have you heard of that, base-layered architecture? Raise your hand, how many have heard of that? Okay, I'll suggest you also to look into that too, base-layer architecture. That's a methodology, a framework that Gartner came up with related to the 2-speed IT. Okay, now, I just wanted to get your attention about 2 things that are going on and say, well, what's going on? Well, those are 2 things that your CIOs and CTOs are, not sleeping these days or spending time about it. Okay, so let me talk about it, and I'm going to relate it to IT security. Okay, so there are many frameworks. In this session this morning, I hear about, NIST and ISO 27000 and so forth. There are many frameworks for many things. Security. There are frameworks for IT management as ITIL, for governance as COVID, and there are many frameworks. So one of the questions is, okay, which of these frameworks helps me in assessing the value, measuring value, identifying the metrics, particularly for security, so that we can deliver business value and results and, protect the business and so forth. Many of these have some value-related elements. For example, you're familiar with ITIL. I'm sure many of you are maybe even certified as ITIL Foundation. There's a new class called ITIL Practitioner that some of you may have heard that just came up to the market. ITIL is introducing launching ITIL Practitioner. ITIL Practitioner is 100% centered on value creation, customer value creation. That's what they say. That's what we gotta work on. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna talk about how can we use these frameworks for assessing value, in particular IT security. How's my dynamic hands going? Is that okay? All right. So why this session? There is a large number of IT frameworks that are appearing in the market. Some of them are new, some of them are just enhanced. So this presentation is to highlight, again, which frameworks can be used to enable the value of IT and justify IT security initiatives. So I'm also going to show you examples. There is a framework that I'm going to talk specifically, and I'm going to show you some of these tools that this framework has. Hopefully you can take, from here some ideas that you can even implement and adopt, so that you can start, using some of these things I'm going to share with you for justifying your security initiatives. So before we get into that, let's talk about what's happening. Let's go back to this two-speed IT and base layer architecture and so forth. So we went through an industrial age. Well, I say we, some of you are very young. I went through that, where is, still remember when I was working, I was in college, and someone would say, oh, we're going to get a new machine. What kind of machine? Oh, you can actually connect it in the phone, and you can actually send a drawing from one phone to another phone. That was a fax machine, 1976, by the way. Okay, so that was kind of what's going on at that time, and then the information age came, of course, mainframes, glass room, as some of those, some people used to call them, and then the PC, and you know this better than I do. Then the information age created, of course, the network world through the internet, and now we are at the beginning of a digital age, right? Cloud, mobility, big data. I can add other things. Again, these are things that you know better than I know. So today we are what some people call round one. So there's a new round of IT coming. That's the round of the analytics and the algorithm economy, which I'm going to talk in just a minute. So there's a quote here. I apologize, you probably cannot read it, but just a few days ago, John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, wrote an article and so forth that says that we are at the beginning of the biggest technology transition ever. Yet the majority of the digital efforts will fail. Okay, so that's an attention getter, right? May not necessarily fail technologically. Maybe his meaning may fail short of delivering the expected value. So let's talk about that. Okay, so the next round, which again, these are things that you know, I'm just going to review them. IoT, Internet of Things. Process automation. I'm not talking about industrial process automation. We're talking about office process automation, which is closed loop, not only business intelligence, but also closed loop to automate sensors, whether it's in t-shirts or shoes or in our watches or in fishing rods and so forth. So there's going to be a lot of points of data collecting, and that is, of course, changing how business processes are executed. So in the industrial age, we went from designing corporations, designing processes. Information age, we went through the re-engineering, and then now we're in the transformation, reinventing, disrupting processes, and so forth. So this is causing business cycles to change. Go back to my friend Guru's point, which is strategic planning is not working as it used to. So what's happening is all of these technologies, the cloud, mobility, mobile applications, so forth, are bringing a lot of opportunities and a lot of threats, as you know. So the business cycles, when an opportunity or threats appear, you're going to do something. Someone in the business area or in the IT area had to develop something, right? An application or do something to react to the opportunity or to the threat, right? That's something that you cannot wait until next year to the next budget cycle and send it for sourcing for an RFP and send it to finance for ranking. We got to do it now, because if we don't, something may happen or we may lose an opportunity. So that's a business cycle. So the current budget that used to have a budgetary portion for discretionary budget is not enough. It has to be a bigger bucket. That's where the base layer architecture that Gartner came up allows companies to put a strategy where you can put your applications or your projects and assign them to tiers or layers. I'm not going to talk about that, but that's what that is. And basically, there are three layers, but it's basically two buckets. One is for a fast modality and one for a traditional modality. The traditional modality is projects or initiatives that follow traditional governance, where you can afford, like, let's do an RFP, let's talk to vendors, let's go to finance, let's look at scenarios. We can wait until next year. The fast speed is the ones that you gotta do something now. Let's not wait. We gotta implement and execute this in a matter of months. So this is a concern. Why? Because always initiatives are a concern. Okay, but this level of concern is increasing because this new digital age with shorter cycles, less time to do due diligence, less time to think about it and do scenarios. We got to do things fast, more projects. Therefore, the security is increasing, the risk, right? And there's more points of vulnerability because a lot of things are coming, right? So a lot of points of data and information coming in and out of our enterprise. So there are methodologies that have managed value and quality, such as the total quality management, the Six Sigma. And I'm going to talk about one which is available right now, which is EVC, which stands for Enterprise Value Creation. I'm going to show you some methodologies, but some tools that this methodology framework has. But all of these are basically designed to help you manage value. So I'm going to expand on this subject. But what is value management? This is the traditional process for value management. Ideas appear in the business units. They go through a business case delivery preparation, and then they get approved. They go into project management and the new agile methodologies and so forth, and then they go into operations and they're maintained and secure and so forth, right? So one of the issues that exists right now is there is not enough coordination, collaboration, and metrics that allow us to track this and make the business get the right outcome and results from the project, okay? So how many of you heard of this program or cultural thing, as it's called? It's called DevOps, short for development and short for ops, DevOps. Okay. DevOps is a new approach, it's a new method, so that the development team and the operational team, IT infrastructure operations, work together to automate things and collaborate and communicate, right? So there are frameworks that are appearing to allow this connection and allow collaboration between the teams. And that includes security, of course. Security, operations, and application development and so forth. So DevOps is one of them. But there are not necessarily the right elements so that everybody communicates, not only within IT, but also with the business area. There's a series of disconnects, right? So in this digital age, the business environment is changing drastically. Opportunities and threats are appearing constantly. Business cycles are becoming faster from idea to execution. Therefore, the customer needs, because businesses have been transformed in a digital format, often disrupted, our customers' needs, not only internal but also external, are constantly changing. And another thing is a large portion of the IT projects and decisions are going in the business side, because they can go SaaS, software as a service, and they may realize later, oh, I'm buying this cloud-based application. And by the way, I got to connect to my ERP or my CRM to collect the data. Well, too late, okay? You didn't tell us before that happened. So there are issues because some of these decisions are happening in the business areas, not in the IT area. So also, enterprises are encouraging innovation. Let's innovate. Let's do things new. Let's do things from scratch, right? Which creates a risk, because when you do something innovative, it means something is new. There's not enough benchmark data. There's no things that we can do trends and analysis. It's just something new. So it's a higher risk. Innovation initiatives have a higher risk and higher uncertainty for realization of benefits, right? So, again, I'm going to skip a couple of these things because I want to be sure I cover some of the slides that are coming. But there are frameworks and standards that help us to go from what I call a static to a dynamic environment. And the difference between these two, I believe there's a slide that covers that in just a minute, but static IT management is what many of us do these days, which is, it has a continual improvement, but as you go through, you implement a program, you implement a framework like ITIL, for example, and then you go through the operations and so forth, and then later you update it, right? You go and update your metrics and your program. So you have continuous improvement, but it's through cycles. It's not dynamic. That means every time there's a new initiative, you don't update your framework. You update it every year or every certain period of time, right? So this innovation, disruption with the faster business cycles is creating a higher risk, higher uncertainty. That's the bottom line. So to succeed, we need a more dynamic approach, okay? Here's where the explanation is. We got to move from reactive to proactive, from static to dynamic. Reactive means waiting until next year to assess the maturity of our IT environment and the risk, and then redefining our strategy, our portfolio, and our services. Proactively, this is what is important here, is to dynamically and proactively participate every time there's a new business initiative. Participate there before the project is approved. And that way, when the project is approved, we all are in sync of what are the expectations and the metrics, whatever it is, so that we can make the project successful. And there are no surprises, right? And the right security things are defined, and the possible vulnerabilities with the new initiative are identified, so that every time there's a new project, we are updating our security metrics and everything we need to do to be sure that we're dynamically involved every time there's a new idea. So we need a framework to allow that value management, which is dynamic, okay? That allows us to have the two speeds, the fastest speed, which is the dynamic, and the traditional speed, which is like for large projects, like infrastructure, like upgrade the ERP, upgrade the telephone system, things that can afford a one-year cycle. So there are a series of frameworks that give you the what to do, other frameworks the how to do it. COIS, you heard of COIS? It's a governance framework. Great, fantastic. It's not the same as ITIL, by the way. It's above ITIL. COIS is more for governance. ITIL is more for process quality, process improvement, process consistency, okay? ITIL, of course, there's a new ITIL practitioner which has increased focus and value. Many of you are familiar or know about Scrum Prince 2, which is another agile methodology, which also mentioned, hey, you gotta do a business case. This is what you gotta do. So all of these cover value. So they tell you what to do, not the how to do it. DevOps, this is more into getting into the how to collaborate, how to work together, how to automate processes so that when a new opportunity comes, we, both operations and development, are coordinating our efforts. Have you heard of the program Resilia? Are you guys in IT security? Raise your hand if you're in IT security. I guess you all are, right? Check this out, Resilia. If you heard of ITIL, which is the organization that the organization that came up with ITIL is now called Axelos. They control ITIL. They just launched this program called Resilia. It's for cyber resilience, okay? And it's on top of ITIL. It follows an ITIL life cycle but it gives you the elements to be proactive in the organization for cyber resilience. So I'm not going to talk about that, but just be aware of that. That's a very exciting program, by the way. I mentioned base layer architecture for the grouping of IT initiatives. And I'm going to talk about EVC, which is the proactive, dynamic approach to measure, collaborate, and communicate value for projects. I'm going to talk about some of the elements of this approach, okay? So, looking at some of these methodologies, you see here which methodologies tend to be reactive, which ones are more dynamic, meaning as projects come, they react and can be updated. Some of these methodologies are for IT management, including IT security, such as all the different frameworks like ISO 27000 and so forth. Some of them are for business management, like governance and so forth. And other ones are for value management, which are, again, base layer and EVC. I would probably move some of these all the way to here a little bit, because COVID and Scrum talk about the business case and ITIL as well. So I would probably modify this slide a little bit. But the point of this slide is that all of these frameworks are very good. They complement each other. The point is, which ones for these allow you to be dynamic? And those are the ones that they are closer to the left. They are dynamic. The ones closer to the X are more reactive, meaning more cyclical oriented. Okay. So if there's one thing that I can tell you, take from this presentation as something that I would recommend you to think a lot about this after today, is this approach I'm going to talk about today, which is what we call the business value plan. So what we recommend is, and it's part of this framework, by the way, the EVC framework, is that moving the organization from the business case to the business value plan. Just name it business. It's not a document, but rename it to business value plan. And change the objective. A business case ends when the project is approved. It's designed to justify the initiative and get the money approved to move forward. The business plan, the idea is, of course, to justify the project, but also it will help you determine the pace of the project. How fast you should go? Should you go fast, or should you go into traditional speed? Okay, and basically it's going to be based on urgency and based on risk. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And in the business plan, include the elements that the different teams, the business area as well as the IT, application development, security, and operations, agree with in the business plan before the project is approved, so that when the project is approved, this document, which was used for justification, actually becomes a plan. Okay, so it's not exactly a project plan, because a project plan, as we all know, is more of a, what is the cost, what are the resources, and so forth, which is, important. This is more focused on the value. What value are we going to create? How are we going to collaborate? And if you are a stakeholder in the project, and let's call you a benefactor, meaning you provide something, you provide security, right? What are the SLAs? What are the metrics that you need to watch, and your customer internally needs to watch? And your customer, what are his KPIs in the business area? Is he going to reduce virus attacks, or prevent certain things, or downtime, or something? What are we going to do to prevent with that? Is a firewall, or is that an application, or what is it? So the definition of metrics of the benefactors that provide the technology and security, and the beneficiaries that receive the benefits, are all in synchronization. So the core of this dynamic IT value management practice is basically changing from a business case to a business value plan. And this is the main message I would probably leave you today, which is the business value plan is something that just by calling your document that justify the initiative plan, it will give everybody okay, this is how we're going to execute the plan, the value. And that plan has to increase the means for identifying the best metrics, the involvement of the benefactors and beneficiaries, the stakeholders, and the validation and agreement on those metrics, so that we know what the expected results are. By the way, this presentation will be available to you as well as part of the presentations that ISSA is going to provide to you after the event. So I'm going to skip this slide because we only have a few minutes left here. So I'm going to talk about one principle, because what you need to do is to adopt principles. This framework, EDC, has different principles. I'm going to talk one which is very important for IT security. You need stages. How do you manage your business value plan? And how do you develop capabilities to do that and define the metrics? And last but not least, but some of the tools to assess the value of this initiative. So this is a summary of the framework. Basically, it's the same thing I just presented, the principles related to the stages, related to the tools. And these are similar stages as we saw in the previous slide, so I'm not going to talk about this particular slide. So one of the issues that we have in frameworks is that we don't have a way to assess the benefits of IT security, okay? And initiatives that help us maintain the revenue or the business going. These are just two recent, things that I found in LinkedIn and I copy and paste there. So the downtime that Amazon had a few days ago, you remember that? I don't know, you saw that one. In 12 minutes, they went down and they lost a couple of $1 million. And then other situations where you find companies that they did not innovate it, they did not do certain things to maintain the revenue went down the hill. So what can we do so that when we can justify initiatives that help us maintain revenue, maintain business results, such as IT security? So this framework, EDC, has 11 different principles. One of them is this principle, which is number 6, which says maintaining profits or cash, if you are in a government organization, is as important as increasing profits. So this is very basic, but very fundamental, okay? Most projects have a business case to increase value, that means to increase profits. How? By reducing costs or increasing revenue, right? That's very simple. What we don't have is a way to determine the benefits and quantify the benefits of maintaining value, which is identifying costs that may exist which are not budgeted, to avoid those costs, and to protect revenue, right? IT security, most of the IT security is not about increasing value, it's about protecting value, avoiding costs and maintaining revenue, okay? So I'm going to talk a little more about that, but this is an example that if executives adopt that, and if we adopt it, is that every business case has to have benefit in these 4 categories. There's higher chances that benefits that projects are approved to maintain value. I'm going to skip this one because it talks only a little bit about the stages that we already covered. So I want to talk briefly about some examples for tools that can be used to enable the fast speed and the dynamic approach, and also the justification of IT security initiatives. I'm going to talk about what's called the EDC matrix. I'm going to talk about the analysis called the degree of urgency. Another one called causation analysis. I'm not reading the next bullets because I'm going to talk about each one of these separately. And then what we call benefits MQ, like IQ, but this is MQ, which stands for the means of quantifying a benefit, okay? So this is the same way, the same thing that I just saw in the previous slide. These are the different tools that I'm going to talk about, and these are tools that can be used in a sequence. First, for identifying benefits and aligning strategic objectives, for determining the speed of a project, for mapping them between the benefactors and the beneficiaries, in other words, IT security, for example, in the business areas, forecasting value, and then measuring during and after the implementation. So this metric has multiple levels. This is the highest level of this metric, okay? And what we have here is 5 different areas of potential needs in the enterprise. Areas which identify technology needs. For example, hey, we have a need to increase our server uptime. Okay? That's a technology need, okay? Or we have an operational need. We have a need to reduce the incidents. Or economic need. We have a need to reduce budget costs or to protect this revenue. Or financial needs, which is we need to increase our gross margin, things like the CFO is looking for, or understand the impact on our balance sheet in our company. or strategic needs, such as maintaining customer loyalty or increasing customer loyalty. The reason why we have these two sections here is because the top section is about, you may have in your enterprise needs for any of these 5 areas that are about increasing value, but you may have also needs in any of these areas about maintaining value. So this is a tool that you can use to say, okay, we have a new initiative. Where will the initiative fit? Right? What kind of need is this? Is this about increasing value or maintaining value? And what type of needs? So operational or strategic or technical or where it is. This tool can be used in other dimensions, which are not shown here, to link into benefits identification, assess risk, and so forth. But this is all about risk because it's about maintaining value, and again, this is mainly where IT security initiatives are justified. So again, this is an example of a tool to identify needs in all areas, and the main point of this slide is the maintaining value is as important as increasing value. The other tool is the degree of urgency, and this is something that will take me an hour or two to explain, but I'm explaining why this is very important, okay? When executives make decisions to invest, if you ask the CFO, many CFOs or financial people, they look at two things. One is, what is the total cost of the project? Some people call it TCO. And what is the financial return, right? The payback or the internal rate of return, or what is the return? And they do an index and basically say, oh, you have $10 million. They look at all the projects cost and return, and we're going to run them, and we're going to assign budget based on this. This is how many CFOs still today justify and approve projects. However, many business area executives say, well, hold on, where is the strategic value? Because this is more about ROI. Well, they factor strategic alignment. Say, okay, we have to also, besides this profitability index, which is what's done there, we have to factor the strategic alignment, right? And there are other criteria such as, do we have the right resources and so forth, but that's the second type of generation. Many CFOs, CEOs still rank projects like this. But this is what's new. This is what I'm going to show you what is keeping your CIOs and CEOs up at night. We're saying now we got to rank projects differently. They're trying to figure out this, which is not only what is the impact of this project, financial impact and strategic impact, but what is the degree of urgency? Should it be something that should go now, implemented now, because there's a risk if we don't do it, we miss an opportunity, or we don't do it, we have an incident, like an IT breach or something that happens that we may not protect something and we lose revenue or customers or, things that, and what is the speed? Which speed should we follow? So this criteria, which is pace-driven, okay, and this is where the Gartner pace layer architecture falls into as well. It helps determine which project is going to which speed, which is basically based on the degree of urgency. Okay? So this is what now CIOs and CEOs and CFOs are trying to determine. What is my new criteria to factor besides the impact, the degree of urgency? So, of course, that's good conceptually. How do you do that? Well, every project has benefits, right? And executives, we think in the technology side, in the operations, that executives want 100% certainty in benefits. Well, that's not the case. All benefits of any project, absolutely all of them, have uncertainty. It may be low, medium, or high, but because you're forecasting, it's an estimation that if I do this, I may prevent this. If I do this, I may increase this. If I do this, you're forecasting something for the future that may or may not happen. So it could be lower or higher. So this tool, which is called the uncertainty analysis, the idea here is to do a causation analysis, do a effect analysis, and then understand the relationship. The uncertainty of a project is not the cause, it's not the effect. It's the relationship between the cause and the effect. So if people ask, well, what's tangible or what's intangible? Well, we can argue all night, but at the end of the day, it's because one is more certain, the other one is more uncertain, right? So what's important is not if a benefit is tangible or intangible. That honestly doesn't matter. Is the benefit measurable? If it can be measured, then you can quantify it. And then if you can quantify it, how much can we improve or reduce or increase the forecast? Well, that's going to depend on the uncertainty, the relationship between this is what IT going to do, protect or reduce or change, and this is the effect, how many we're going to, of this particular effect, whether incidents or revenues or transactions or whatever it is, or uptime we're going to increase or reduce that we can measure and quantify. So depending on the type of causation, the degree of uncertainty can be higher or lower, and the predictability of the benefit. Okay, so I'm showing you concepts, and I want to acknowledge that this is not a detailed how-to, but I'm hopefully giving you enough ideas for you to think about how to assess some of these benefits. These are part of this methodology, by the way, the EDC methodology. And then the last thing is about what we call the benefits and means of quantification. Every benefit, you can have a structure, which is how do I structure every benefit so I can quantify anything, okay? So the main thing I can teach you today is the following. If you can measure a benefit, it doesn't matter what it is, customer loyalty, customer satisfaction, employee retention, tangible, intangible, what it doesn't matter. If you can measure it, you can quantify it. That's as simple as that. The issue is going to be how much of that can I reduce? That's the forecast, right? Which is going to depend on the relationship between the cause and the effect. But the message here is that any benefit that you quantify, what can I measure? Because if you measure the effect, and it's the measure of the effect, then you know what the outcome is going to be in the business. And then you can say, okay, here are my SLAs in my IT organization. These are, technology metrics, right? And this is what I'm going to provide. And then this is the SLA, the KPI of my business areas, of my clients that are going to receive. And if you can identify the KPI of what your client is going to get, you can quantify the benefit. Again, I'm not going to have time to explain this in detail. The message here is that any benefit, you can have a structure, of course, and this methodology actually teaches you how to have a structure, by the way, based on best practices and validation for accuracy of the monetary quantification. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that if you can measure a benefit, no matter what it is, you can quantify. And if you try to do that and you can't, give me a call or email me. I'm going to show you email, okay, and I'll show you how, because that's basically how you quantify any benefit. Okay, so I don't know how much time more I have. What was the end of the time? I didn't put a tape. Okay, so I only have 5 minutes. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to, see if you have any questions or comments, things you would like me to explain or elaborate in things that I have said today. So any comments, questions, suggestions? All right. Well, it seems like you are ready for the next session because it's in the afternoon and we need a cup of coffee. So thank you very much all for your time. Here's my email. If you have any questions, if you have a benefit you don't have to quantify, email me. I'll give you the quantification. Okay? Is that a deal? Okay, thank you.